Welcome, dear students, to EPG Pathshala. We are talking about different aspects of cultural studies, and I would be lecturing on the particular module called Superman. Before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Divya Kusum Ray. I teach English in National Institute of Technology, Silchar, Assam. As for Superman, the topic of the module, let me just tell you that we are going to be talking about mostly of the concept that Superman is, less about the character, although the character features amply in the lecture to follow. We would be talking about the origins, the history, and the cultural manifestation of the concept of Superman. We will try at the end of it to give you an idea about what Superman is, what Superman means, and how the concept of Superman changes from time and from culture and tries to replicate itself to the tensions and anxieties of a particular nation, a particular time, and a particular culture. Let us begin. Superman, ladies and gentlemen, plain definition wise, as you can clearly understand, Superman is something more than a man. In ancient texts, there are things like a savior figure, gods especially, something more than a man, something everybody can dream or depend on, and somebody who has got superhuman power and such. Now, that would be the cut and dry pedestrian version of the definition. However, the critical definition of Superman is far more complicated than that, and for that we will also require somehow a historical perspective, especially concentrating on the Enlightenment philosophy. By Enlightenment philosophy, I actually mean two authors, two thinkers in general, but there are others as well. One is Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was in 1883 to 85, wrote a particular book called Thus Spake Zarathustra. The idea of Superman, or the Übermensch. Übermensch is a German word, person generally, literally translated into Superman, is carefully talked about. And the other one is G.W. Hegel. Hegel, almost at the same time, in the basically Enlightenment time, talks about the role of Superman and the role of Superman in the society, and the effect a role of Superman would be, affect the presence of a Superman in a society will create on the inhabitants of such a society. But before that, let's take our steps backwards a little, and we would be coming to Nietzsche. Now, Nietzsche in Thus Spake Zarathustra talks about Superman in a completely different manner. Actually, Hegel and Nietzsche both are talking about Superman, and by their definition, it is unlikely that you would be finding any exact parallel to the concept of Superman that we generally use these days, the Superman in the blue cape, sorry, the red cape and the blue dress and all that. But there is a connection, and I hope you will be finding it by the end of the lecture. Now, here is the thing. By Nietzsche and Hegel, if you go by their logic, Superman or Übermensch is a savior, no doubt. It is a savior of mankind. Remember, the whole Enlightenment philosophy is based on this particular human being who is better than its equals, who is better than the other people around him on the same society. He is better not only in the sense of physical prowess, but also in the sense of intellectualism, in basic general human gifts. He is basically a new man. The new man will come from the ordinary human beings only, but he will take the things, he will amp up the possibilities of human endeavor to a certain extreme. Now remember, regarding both Hegel and Nietzsche, there is also a margin of mistake. What does it mean? A margin of mistake means this particular Übermensch would be able to someday to transcend the barriers of human endeavor, and he will be taking steps which would be beneficial for the entire mankind. But there is a margin of mistake. He might make mistakes. Disasters might happen because of his mistakes. But at the end, people will see that the decision that he took, in comparison to that, in comparison to the goodness of the decision, such disasters are actually a very small price to pay. Now, I hope you can see the inherent problems in it. What are the inherent problems? First is a person taken as almost a god, being directed to be followed by the people around him. Now, there may be mistakes. The mistakes may be disastrous, but ultimately there would be a huge payback for it. The first problem, or rather the first argument that can be made against it, is that this is another apology of tyranny. Certainly it is. Immanuel Kant, another very prominent name in Enlightenment philosophy, talks about the king of his time, Frederick the Great, actually. And he terms him as Superman, as the new man, as the truly enlightened man, and says that all the subjects should be following Frederick the Great, a king as the Superman. Now, was Frederick the Great really the Superman like King Kant was making him to be? Very difficult to answer. Maybe historians would be looking at Frederick the Great in a far less favorable light, which is equally probable, but that is not our point in here. Please understand that the idea of Superman, a man better than the others, that's why the super comes from the Enlightenment time, and it is fraught with problems definitionally from the very beginning, from the very start from the very moment when the name Übermensch was taken by Nietzsche and Hegel. So as I was saying, Nietzsche and Hegel both are continuing about the whole idea of Superman. Now, as I told you that in the Enlightenment philosophy, it is always imagined that there should be a person. A person, it's basically a natural evolution. When we were, from the stage of the apes, the human beings came up. Exactly in the same manner, in some sort of a philosophical evolution, it is imagined. It is not imagined, actually. It is predicted. It is prophesied by Kant or Hegel and Nietzsche that there will come a person who will understand the existence, the worldly existence of men better than other people. Right now, according to Hegel and Kant and such, that we are living under the bargaining pressure of religion as such. Religion and its morals and moralities and such. This is deadening. This is not getting us anywhere. But the new person, the new advanced person, not so much biologically but intellectually actually, he would be coming in order to take us away from the shackles of religions and morals of 1,000 years that we have been following and make our life and our eyes more receptive to the light of knowledge, to God, to the supreme knowledge, to whatever you might presume. If we move from 19th to 20th century, we would be again finding another very important thinker, but this time not German, George Bernard Shaw, a person that we all know of. George Bernard Shaw, the famous dramatist and playwright, was actually wrote a particular play, which is again very common, Man and Superman in 1903, the very early 20th century. In here, although Shaw is talking about, apparently, about man and the better man, Superman, he is actually taking a very satirical perspective, is taking a dig at the whole Superman culture as such. He presents a Superman, he presents a person in a conservative society who talks about liberation, who talks about gender equality, who basically a man who seems to be from almost another planet. So progressive his views are. But at the end of the play, George Bernard Shaw is revealing that person to be even more conservative, even more hypocritical, even more sexist, a modern Don Juan, basically, than the others around him. So what Shaw seems to be thinking is that Superman, the whole concept of Superman, is nothing but a farce. People who claim themselves to be Supermen are actually nothing but imposters who do this all the time in order to pass themselves off as better than other people all around him, but they really are not. They're simple imposters posing to be something they are really not. Shaw, the Shavian Superman as such, takes a very cynical view towards the word Superman. Now, when we come to the more cultural specific, so much so for the etymological history of Superman as such, the conceptual history of Superman. Now, when we come to the cultural history of Superman, we cannot think of him without his own land called United States of America. The whole word, English word, not Übermensch, the English word Superman comes from US only. This is common knowledge, rife all over the internet. It's basically illustrated and penned by Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel in 1938. The first time when the comic strip came up. 1938 is an important time, and I need a little to talk about it. 1938, if you know your history enough, you know that the 30s were the time of the Great American Depression. The time was extremely tough. Poverty was to the extreme. Economic downturn was at its all-time high. Now, if you know anything about American society, you must have heard the word called American Dream. What is the American Dream? American Dream is basically the dream of building a new nation, of a land of equal opportunities. If you are gifted enough, then you can make your opportunities, and there would be a classic story of rags to riches. Then the whole idea of American Dream got a serious bungling up at the time of the 30s, the Great Depression, the capitalism, the very backbone of American society, which they thought was infallible, was showing its true colors, as the Marxists will say, and all the whole superstructure of economy was about to be crashing down to the ground and turned into smithereens of dust. At this time of general cynicism, there comes Superman from Schuster and Siegel in 1938. Superman is a person who is a problem solver, both by brain and brawn, and he can take the whole idea of American Dream to a new extreme. He is a savior. At the same time, he is also a common man. How? Of course, you know, Superman has got two avatars, two sides actually. One is Kal-El. He is from the planet Krypton, and because of his alien origins and superpowers, he can achieve feats that the other human beings cannot. He's not even a human being. That is one side. And the other side is his alter ego called Clark Kent, who basically is a sexually unattractive, extremely henpecked, non-performing journalist with a very common face. Yet they are the same people. The very common modern American man can turn into a being of great potential. That's what the Superman lore seems to be giving us for so long. So now, but just remember that in American culture, Superman, the central character, is actually not the first one to make its presence felt. Before Superman, there was another Superman, just his name was not Superman. We are talking about Edgar Rice Burroughs, another very famous character called John Carter, which first came into being in 1912 in Edgar Rice Burroughs' literature. John Carter is an explorer of Earth, somehow by choice, by not by his choice, transported into the planet Mars. Now, since Mars has a lesser gravitational pull than Earth as such, he can manipulate that gravitational difference and can jump great heights, can use his body to throw objects far beyond any possible human being on Earth as such, basically have superpowers. The interesting thing is that Kal-El or Clark Kent or the Superman on Earth actually comes from an alien land, as you know, and because of the Earth's gravitational matrix, he can manipulate him and do the things that he generally can do, and we all cheer him for, like taking a whole aeroplane jumbo jet on his shoulders. So there is a pseudo-scientific side of it. America is also a land of science. So there is a backbone of science fiction to the whole lore of Superman, and from there the story can go anywhere. So again, Superman or John Carter as such, they are there to bring US out of its own self-inflicted darkness. And please remember that in the time of the 30s, especially at the time of Great Depression, US was constantly being reminded of the darker sections, darker, quote-unquote, darker sections of society in the forms of immigrants and mobsters, Italian, Russian, mafia, family, and stuff like that. So this anxiety that our land, our society, our country is being hijacked, our dream is being hijacked by people from outside, this essential othering is also somehow tackled in imagination, of course, by Superman as such. Now, Superman, once again, let me just remind you, history-wise, Superman technically is divided into two people. One is Kal-El, the alien, who is superhuman, who is chivalrous, who is hypersexual, and who is also unreal as such. On the other hand, there is Clark Kent, who is extremely real, who is extremely mild-mannered, who is sexually unattractive, and what not. So, when it comes to Superman's love interest, Lois Lane, you will see the same problem happening again and again. Lois Lane is besotted to Superman as such, but Clark Kent is the person who loves Lois Lane. But Lois Lane naturally has given her heart to Superman. So Clark Kent is a failure, Superman is a success. Yet, interestingly, they are one single person. So each American are having one single, two people in his heart. One is able to do impossible feats, other one is just a common property amongst so many others on the street. Now, a Superman story happened in some sort of an oniric time frame, as in an eternal, undecided time. Superman doesn't get old. The people around him don't get old too much, especially in the classic comics arc as such. And thus he keeps saving the world, not only US, interestingly, not only US, but all over the earth, sometimes in the universe as well, because Superman is the savior of all, because US wants to be the savior of all, wants to be the pathfinder, wants to be the great Übermensch of a troubled time. And remember, 1938, the time when Superman came, it's basically the time sandwiched between two world wars. So this is generally a time of the breaking of dreams, the frustration of hope. Superman brings in the hope resoundingly. Now, if we look at Superman's cultural representation, apart from comics and graphic novels as such, we will also have to look at movies. Now, 50 actors still now, more or less, have played the role, the Clark Kent and Superman. It started with Kirk Alyn. Kirk Alyn was extremely popular as the first Superman, and he somehow was typecast into the role for such a long time. Then came George Reeves. Now, interestingly, about George, there is an interesting trivia. See, an actor playing the role of Superman, the actor as a person also has to be a role model to the younger generations. So George Reeves had to give up smoking in order to fit better into the role of Superman, because even off screen, people used to look up to him. The third was Christopher Reeve, probably by many critics, the most successful Superman actor ever, who played the role of Superman in the first Superman movie directed by Richard Donner. And he also, in order to look like Superman, even in his off-screen avatar, trained under professional bodybuilders and such. After that, there are several other people in the history of, let's say, several decades, like John Houghton, Dean Cain, Tom Welling, Brandon Routh in the first millennial adventures of Superman. But right now, we are actually looking at Henry Cavill, who first came into the film called Man of Steel in 2013. And in 2016, Batman vs. Superman, The Dawn of Justice. And now in 2017, late 2017, just released the film called Justice League. Now, why am I talking about movies right now? The important part that I need to concentrate on, that Superman, in all his multifaceted personality, like in Clark Kent and Kal-El, can be seen in its full form, or rather in its full advantage in the films only. I'll give you an example. Especially in the 2016 movie Batman vs. Superman, if you have seen it, you will know it better. There is a whole argument on whether the public needs the Superman. It is imagining a world where superhumans are coming from darkness, from shadow to the light, because of Superman revealing himself to be something better than the other men. But people around him, especially American people, are feeling threatened constantly by his presence. Why? Because Superman, although he is doing good for the time being, he might turn bad any moment. And if Superman, with his kind of power, if he turns bad, then not even an atomic or nuclear weapon can stop him. This is the same anxiety that drives Batman, the Batman vs. Superman is the name of the movie itself. Batman, almost crazy, and they fight between each other, Batman and Superman. Now, although Batman is just a mere human and Superman is an alien, Batman gains the upper hand by using a particular material from the very planet Superman comes from, kryptonite, and he makes a weapon out of it, and Superman is finally killed by that weapon, not by Batman though, by some other different enemy. But Superman dies because of an element that comes from his home. Why? Because Superman has been humanized. Superman has been a part of the world, of the earth that we know so much and for so long, that he has got human elements in him and he cannot stand that particular material called kryptonite from his own original home. So Superman, like this, has been said to be has been described as the perfect earthly American human hero. And so it happens, and at the end of the film, as such, Batman relents and says that I was wrong, and Superman is someone the world needs. So right now we are looking for his resurrection. We have actually had his resurrection in the film Justice League in 2017 late. Now to sum up whatever we have said is that we were talking about Superman as such. Superman, not as much as the character in films and comics, but also of his origins and his technical aspects of what Superman is actually, what is the conceptual difficulties of Superman. We have talked about Hegel, we have talked about Shaw, we have talked about Nietzsche, and we tried to look into what Superman could be or could not be. Then we went into the cultural manifestation of it. We have talked about the history of the comics, the history of the films, the actors who played Superman, and how the role is actually changing the actor as such, and how in cultural manifestation or filmic manifestations of Superman, important questions about democracy, populism, and insecurity, and humanity and alienness is being tackled with in a constant manner. In order to know more about this, you will have to look into the e-text and the book list that is there, and those materials would be able to give you a far better idea, far detailed idea of the topics that we have discussed so far. So that's about it. Thank you very much for listening.